All right, guys. I know we're in East Coast, and please share your thoughts on this. So at least it's recorded now, and I can move forward. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I was going to say we moved to Wednesday, so yeah, it's also in the middle of the day for me on the East Coast. Friday was a good day, but 3 p.m. was an excellent time for me. Later in the day is better, right? Right in the middle of the day can be hard because I'm not going to interrupt customer meetings. So I just end up missing this. And I don't want to miss this. So.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that. Brian, any feedback?
Yes. East Coast as well. End of the day is always a better slot. You know, you get things out of the way. Can't upset the apple cart. Customers got to come first. So
it's true. Yep. I agree. All right, cool. So on that note, I'm going to go ahead and just get this started. This is going to be, this is recorded anyways, and I'll disperse to everyone from here on out. A couple of housekeeping things, scalepad.com/events to get webinars, education, on-site events as well. Where we are at the moment, we are with the Enable peer groups in in Raleigh, and then 7-figure MSP in Fort Lauderdale this week. In November, we're going to be in IT Nation Evolve and IT Nation Connect from November 6th to the 10th, technically. And then on December, well, Women of the Channel, December 8th through 9th. And then, of course, we'll have ScalePad Ignition. Still don't have the actual dates for it and times, but I'll update as I go. We do have the Launchpad events, which is the onboarding for Lifecycle Insights. The VCIO is at 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. on Thursdays. And then the customer success is from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Other things, MSP Confidential, the 4 o'clock or the 3 o'clock call on Fridays has been changed to MSP Confidential, hosted by Luis Giraldo. If you want to know more about that, scalepod.com/events as well. We do have a new Lifecycle Insights Help Center. You can find it at help.lifecycleinsights.io. So any kind of service requests would be best to be put on there. Old Help Center is still live, but will be deprecated in the next few months. We also have a new community platform coming. This will be a central hub for all things ScalePad, forums, discussions, feature requests, roadmap updates, and such. All right. Well, today is the last week of Cybersecurity Awareness Month, but typically cybersecurity should be an everyday thing. And I'm joined today by Damien Stevens, CEO and founder of Servosity. Servosity is a backup and disaster recovery for MSPs. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Damien, to introduce himself. So go for it.
Hey guys, it's nice that we got a little smaller group, so just fire off any questions, anything I could be helpful for. That's my goal today. My quick story is a long time ago I was an MSP, so I don't know what it's like to walk in your shoes now, but I used to do something like that, and we were very blessed. In 1 year we grew from 4 to 17 employees, and I didn't want to burden my techs with backup and that sort of thing, so I continued to manage it. And whenever red emails came through, I made them turn green. I fixed them, probably the same stuff most of us do. And my biggest client called. They had lost everything and I had to restore them. 5 servers at the time, physical servers. That makes me sound like a dinosaur probably, but that's what it was. And the thing about my story is I was using a best of breed vendor and it said success, but after tens and tens of hours with tech support, we couldn't restore. Or according to them, we successfully restored corrupted data. I had to go look my client in the face and say, the thing you trust me with, the thing you've been paying me to do for years, I cannot do. So that was the pivotal point where I decided I can either get out of IT completely, maybe do something, less scary, like jump out of airplanes. If not that, what I ended up doing is I talked to others, and I realized that's the other thing, talk to the more you talk, the more you're not alone in anything, right? Whether it's a sales challenge or a problem with the staff or whatever, or this particular scenario. And I realized more of the people than not have had a miss or a near miss. And so anyway, that's why I started Servosity, is to help MSPs not be in the spot where I was, where I had to look my client in the face and say, I don't have it. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
So Damien is a recovering MSP because he was an MSP back then, and he's still recovering, apparently.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's good. Couple of questions, and please feel free to just go off mute and ask. But a question I have right now is, where do you see cyber in 2024, Damien?
Yeah, you guys probably know more of this than I do, but I think you've probably already seen, right? There can no longer be an unending number of tools added to the stack. You can't go from 3 to 6 to 8 in the cybersecurity stack, and budgets won't allow it. I think that was coming to it. And then, of course, if the economy, as people get more concerned about slowing or instability, et cetera, that they're going to want to see, either lower prices or at least justification. So I think that's going to lead to kind of a consolidation of the stack. I think a lot of folks I'm talking to are tired of having so many layers in their stack. It's not only a cost, but it's in terms of a license, but it's a cost in terms of management. So I think it's becoming consolidation, and it's becoming some sort of proof, not just, the bad guys can get me, put some more tooling in, but like, can you show me an ROI? Can you show me why I'm really doing this? Can you point to regulation that says I need to? Can you point to parts in different frameworks, NIST or MITRE or whatever, that says I really need to do this, or why you're doing this? Or are you just selling me more line items and more things?
Yeah. And technically, like, this is the biggest question, like, for backups and whatnot. What does backups have to do with cybersecurity awareness?
Yeah. I mean, it's the other side of the coin, is the way I look at it, right? I hope you never need your backups for cybersecurity reasons. I hope you never need your backups ever. I mean, I think if we've been in IT long enough, we know that's not too realistic, but, I don't know any CISO worth their salt that would say, I've put in this state-of-the-art stack and there's no way possible anybody will ever get past this. I've just never met a good CISO that would say something like that. So we all know there's still risk, and that's the way I would look at it and say, what's the risk? And there is still some risk there that no matter how good your state-of-the-art stack is, that you still get encrypted, you still get ransomed, that you still get whatever the attack happens to be. And obviously there's other non-cybersecurity reasons you might need a backup, but human error is still one of the large causes, just like business email compromise is still one of the largest causes of a cyber attack, or getting a footing there. So if you know you have a solid and tested backup that you can rely on, in the case that all the other things have failed, it's your last line of defense. So it's definitely not your first line. But I don't know who could operate without it or who would. So I think we all have a pretty good understanding of that.
Awesome. And you talking about all those stacks and whatnot, what makes your product unique against all the other backup people's?
Really, two things that we do differently. We do maybe something different or better than one or another, but at the big picture, there's two things we do differently. One is we manage all the backups for you. So we basically said, and we started off just like every other vendor. Here's our wonderful backups, and aren't they amazing? And we'll train you, and you operate it, and you call us if you have any questions. And then we started looking at it and saying, we are the ones that stare at this 24/7. We are the ones that talk to our developers. We're the ones that have, an easier understanding of this. So we've decided to flip that script on its head and say, why don't my team become the ones that are responsible for managing and monitoring backups? So you have still real-time insights. Everybody's got the single pane of glass buzzwords, all that kind of stuff. You can still see, and unfortunately backups will still fail. I've got no magic unicorn sauce or anything like that, but when backups fail, you don't have to do anything. It's now my team's responsibility. They have to investigate it. They have to address the issue proactively. So if you think of a SOC or something like that, that's staring at everything 24/7, monitoring, managing, and fixing, That's what we're doing, but on the backup side. So that's the managing, which includes recovery. The other thing that we do differently is directly related to my story. We test this for you. And I don't mean a boot up screenshot, because, that doesn't tell you enough. Like back when I lost data, I didn't have the screenshots booting up. That wasn't the era, but you can go to a source of truth on the internet, in other words, Reddit, and know there's lots of people besides me that had a valid screenshot and couldn't recover. So what do we do about that? So we test, and it's built in, it's not optional. We test every backup every single day. And we test every volume within every backup every single day. And then we do weekly and monthly and quarterly. So we have everything from every single volume every single day with proof stored there, all the way to quarterly, which includes full DRs of service spin up in the cloud, the building burned down, ransomware infected, everything, whatever the scenario is, I need to be running, not at that location or site. So we're just obsessed with testing. And at the end of the day, our belief is, I don't care if it's our software or somebody else's, an untested backup is Schrodinger's cat. And we want to know if it makes it past all your cybersecurity and all the other things you've done, that we can count on it. And the only one we believe in is a tested one.
Okay. You've briefly touched upon this, what happens when backup fails and whatnot. Do you want to expand on that, or you want to go with common backup challenges for MSPs? What do you?
Now I can start with the first one, and
Okay.
happy to answer questions about what Servosity does, but I think it might be more valuable to talk about in the broader sense. And my point around what happens if backups fail, we were like every other backup company for most of our existence. In other words, we said, here's this great software, and here you go, and you monitor it and you manage it. And we had some amazing MSPs that whenever a backup failed, they looked at it the same day, and probably 3 out of 4 times actually fixed it the same day. So backups had, occurred most of the time. On the other end of the spectrum, we had people that call themselves MSPs that would go weeks or sometimes months with failures and not investigate. And, my support team, when we were the traditional way, wasn't charged with fixing things. But even so, they were just like, this is still failing. Like, I need to, they would call, and sometimes they weren't super responsive. I think most folks are somewhere in the middle where they can't look at everything instantly. Depending on when you land a new client, you get super busy. I think everybody knows what happened with COVID, VPNs and remote access everywhere, and everybody's working all the time. And I talked to a lot of our partners during that time, and they're like, the truth that I don't want to say is we haven't checked backups in a week or 2 weeks. And if you haven't checked it, you don't know. And that puts you, the MSP, in a really large risk exposure area. So, it's not just what happens if it fails. It's really, how quickly can you get to that? And, we all know that the client issues generally come first. It's hard to say, let's go review the backups when somebody's yelling for remote access, or they can't do work because they need that, or you just landed a big one. So that's been the challenge, I think, and still is with any MSP, because we have MSPs that are one-man shops. And then on the other hand, there's one that came on board with 5 full-time people dedicated to managing backups. And they said it was still a crap show, except their words were far more colorful. And it's because it's kind of a reactionary type thing. And then there's the obvious stuff, VSS and other things that you see enough. And then there's the less obvious where you have to now go get the vendor involved. So it's not always an easy fix. And I've met very few MSPs that raise their hand and say, backup is my differentiator. It's the reason I do business. It's the reason I started this. It's a reason clients pick me. So if that's not your differentiator, then, what do you do when it fails? And when I was in MSP, we were always torn, because it was like, there's new billable work, there's tickets coming in. And, when you get to a little bit bigger size, like when I mentioned, they had 5 full-time people dedicated, which is a really large MSP. But, in the interim, some of the ones they get to where they get a dedicated person that kind of takes care of operational issues and separates that from the rest of, let's say, the reactive support team, so that you at least know they maybe could try to meet some sort of like internal SLA. In other words, I will review everyone every business day or something like that, which is frankly better than I was always able to do, like probably 8 or 9 times out of 10 daily. But sometimes people were on vacation and or sick and or both. And, all of a sudden I'm out remoting into a client doing all this work, and, backups took the back seat. So I just, was an MSP and just try to have a candid conversation around the challenges.
You touched on the fully managed aspect of your software. What does that actually mean, like fully managed?
What that means for us is you just deploy an agent. You want to double click it, that's fine. If you wanted to deploy it through RMM, you can do that as well. So bulk deploy or one at a time, whatever makes sense. Put my nerd hat on for a second. What I think is cool about it is you don't have to know what kind of backup it is. If it's a desktop, if it's a server, what kind of backup you're going to do, you can just deploy it. So if you need to protect all these devices, it's a single installer, and then it shows up in our portal, and you get to basically assign it what kind of license or protection you like. And all you do is just say that's a server. And the only other choice that you or somebody in your team makes is which volumes. Hopefully it's all volumes that you want protected, C, D, and E. But if there's a good reason to exclude one, you do. We include unlimited storage to try to dissuade you from not selecting everything. So that way you don't end up shooting yourself in the foot like I'd done before, trying to be savvy on the storage costs. So all you do is deploy an agent, select some volumes, and your team is done. My team is monitoring the initial offsite backups, the local backups, the daily testing happens as well, all of those sort of things. And so on a day-to-day basis, you'll still see in real time what are happening with every client, every device, backups, failures, successes, all of those things. But you have nothing you have to do. If there is something where my team needs your help, for example, the only fix is, rebooting the server, then my team will proactively reach out to yours and say, hey, we need a reboot. What most commonly happens is you say, scheduled, done, 4 a.m. is the reboot. So they'll go ahead and revisit that proactively to see if that fixed the issue. Lastly, recovery is everybody's job. So, that's the reason we actually exist. So what I mean by that is we didn't have to teach you all of our software and all the nuances of all the config and setup and all that stuff, because you just double click an agent, and then the only way you have to manage it is in our web portal. And so it's far less to learn than the traditional backup because you're not managing it, but you can still do recovery. So we'll show you how to recover, whether it's in the cloud or to bare metal or directly into Hyper-V or VMware or whatever that is. So or pull out files or just all those sort of things. So you and your team are confident. I guess the way I put it is when your best client calls and they're like, I need that file back, or I got to run payroll and the server's down, or whatever the issue is, you can be the hero on the phone and click the button. You don't have to, like any tech guy, you don't have to speak to a human. You just want to press buttons and get it done. You can do that. On the other hand, what may be counterintuitive compared to others is we include that recovery. So if you guys are stretched really thin, or maybe a lot of you folks are on site, or again, vacation and sick, whatever that looks like, you can just send that over and have us do. We can recover a file onto their machine. We can spin up a VM, not only in the cloud, but even on-prem for you. And we don't charge anything extra. So basically we could do all the recoveries or none of the recoveries, or just depending on the workload. And again, since that's the reason we exist, we don't want to put a cost associated with you doing that. So you can put us to work when you have that, when you need to do a recovery.
Awesome. Last question for you is how often should MSPs give backup details to their clients? And then I'm going to open it up to Joe, Jeff, and Brian and ask them how often do they do it, and we'll have a conversation about that. So go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm gonna answer this strongly, and then maybe they'll disagree, which will be interesting. But backup details, never. I've worked with so many MSPs that like send every report or email in real time to their client, and then a lot of times the client just doesn't understand that if you ran, hourly backups, so 24 a day times 30 days, you're getting, 700 plus backups a month. and 2 failed, that's a pretty good. But you got the one that's like, but something failed. Like, what's wrong with you? Why don't you make this perfect? So sometimes you end up with very unrealistic expectations. Never is my stance. And the real reason is, who cares about backup? They only care about recovery. So what I advise, and I know Lifecycle certainly would endorse the QBR, I think you put this in the QBR. I think daily is way too often, weekly is too often for most, maybe monthly, but probably it's a quarterly, where you can put in, and you can put in like percentage of backup successful. We allow you to report on that, but who really cares? What we allow you to do is we're testing it. So we can actually tell you how many tests were actually successful and proven. And the testing that we're doing is not Servosity's testing. We're actually mounting every single volume and running the same Microsoft checklist that we all know and hate against it, and storing the logs. We're proving at the volume level, all this nerdy stuff, so you could prove to your clients. So at the end of the day, on a quarterly business review, you could say, look, we've tested it every single day, and this is the percentage that were successful. We did these weekly tests, these monthly tests, and this quarter we also spun you up and did a full DR test. So if you got all that information rolling into your QBR, then that's way better than like, I did a bunch of backups. Because what does that tell me as a business person that's not an IT person, and really as an IT person? Like, what good's a backup if I don't know I can recover? So I would focus more on the business objective of, we tested it, so we know we have faith in it. We did these other tests, and including a quarterly cloud spin up. And then you can talk about, here was the RPO and the RTO that we were able to achieve, not in theory, not that we hoped, but here was the actual. We include it every quarter. So whether you want to do it less often is up to you, but that's why we include every quarter. Goes nicely in your QBR, differentiates you, makes the other MSPs look like idiots, hopefully. All that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Awesome. Joe, any feedback on that? Do you guys do it?
Yeah, we're the same way. We don't share any of that information with the client, and we have a person checking that daily. Actually, it's a service team manager.
Nice.
So he sets aside some
Jeff,
time.
anything from you? Like, do you guys do it quarterly? What do you guys do?
You might have interrupted Joe. Joe was about to drop some knowledge.
I love that it warns you that you're on mute. I start chattering away and it says, "Hey, idiot." So yeah, we do the same thing, because it does freak people out. And I do tell them the same thing. It's the restore that counts. It's not the backups. It's the testing is the thing that's driving us a little crazy. So my ears perked up when you talked about that, because that's onerous. It's a lot of work. We are using Backup Radar, ScalePad's Backup Radar, to keep track of everything.
Awesome.
But
I recommend it regularly. Yeah.
Brian, any feedback on that, or is that what you guys are doing?
Yeah, we're the same. We're in the same boat.
Awesome.
Yeah, I completely agree. We need to control that narrative. You give them too much information, they'll choke on it, unfortunately.
All right. Nobody trying to disagree so far. All right. That's interesting.
I didn't think they wanted to. I don't think they wanted your smoke, Damien. You know what I'm saying? These hands are rated E for everyone. I'm just saying.
That's right.
So, all right. Let's get into this. I've been showing this all 3 weeks so far, as far as cyber offerings crippling your MSP. Would you mind talking more about this real quick, Damien? You were the one who actually slashed this in like 3 basic aspects of it. So if you want to go talk about it
a little bit.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, the one is kind of the point I said earlier. Like, I feel like it's a full-time job to evaluate your security stack and try to learn the new tooling, right? So that can lead to analysis paralysis. There's so many tools. There's so much noise. It's really hard to tell what the tools really do versus what marketing says. And being that security is so, it's not just technical, but like, it's hard to prove. You put a new tool in, like, how do you really know it's any better unless you could hire a hacker to try to really prove that? So that, there's just so many tools. How do you know? Right. That's the number one. Number two, that pressure, it's what we're talking about, like this. I'd love to hear from you guys, but I don't think anybody is saying there's less risk from a cyber perspective. There's less attacks. It's easier. Like Microsoft finally shipped an impenetrable version of Windows, or, I've never heard any of that.
Don't do that while I'm drinking, Damien.
Yeah. So it just leads to this pressure where it's like, I don't know, is the expectation you need to add more to your stack? Is it, does that build up to you or to whoever, you're running your, responsible for security, whether it's you, whether it's a vCISO, whether it's your, director of ops, whatever that looks like, somebody's getting that pressure, feeling like they need to make the right choices. And then, that doesn't even talk about the business parts, right? Margins, other things like that. Like, I've talked to a lot of MSPs that are like, I added this to the security stack because it was the right thing to do, but I added it to my existing agreement. So all I'm doing is lowering my margin. And some of them are doing it because it's the right thing to do. But that's not really what needs to happen to us as MSPs, is lower the margins more and more. And then number 3, I think, I think there's I don't know about you guys. Part of the reason I think I got into the business IT and being an MSP was because things changed so much, because I liked that, like, there was never like, it's kind of like the meme of, I got to the end of the internet and I was done. I think that's how it is, how to be an MSP. There's just no end. But the pace has really, really hastened, whether it's post-COVID, whether it is chat GPT, whatever the things are. Like, I imagine, I'd be curious to hear if you guys, if your clients are asking you, how do I use AI? What do I do with this chat GPT thing? They may not have well-formed questions yet, but it's hard to know that. And how do you become an expert in something that's been out less than a year? There was actually the director of Google basically had a nice graph of like, here's our ability to deal with change. It's kind of a more straight angle. And then, but the rate of change is now essentially exceeded the human ability to adapt. And that's the director of Google saying that. That's their theory. So I think it's that the way I look at that at the end of the day is that creates amazing opportunities in the MSP space to differentiate and to specialize. Because I think it's going to be harder and harder to be the generalist and know everything. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts.
Jeff? Anything? Joe?
As far as AI goes, we haven't really leveraged it to this point. But I think if you can leverage it as far as even just something as seemingly simple as automation, you can, I think you could see some successes there. It's probably something way beyond that even, but just a simple automation tasks can help improve your own internal efficiencies and effectiveness. But I think that's the baby step. I don't even know what's beyond that.
Yeah.
Right.
Awesome. So I'm going to go into the last slide. If you want to address this, Damien, what this servosity.com/process is.
Yeah. So I think I mentioned to you guys that I was an MSP. So I spent the last 18 years trying to figure out how to not be in front of a client saying, I lost your data and I don't have it. And so here's this probably makes me a bad salesperson, but my view is you can go, and we finally took all this stuff that was internal, and I was like, this is our secret sauce of how we manage, how do we test, how we do it at scale, how do we not miss things? And so we made it available for download at servosity.com/process. I call it Steal My Process. So my point is, you can hire us to do all that testing and all the little details of managing it for you, because you can test, but it takes a lot of labor if you don't have a really good process, or you can have us do it. But there's a whole lot of reasons why it may not make sense to do business right now. And so this is what I want to give you if you'd like to download it. And so it's multiple pages, and you can use it with any tool. It's not specific to what we're doing. It's some of the stuff will be, okay, we got that. Other stuff is like, I didn't think that the tech that sets up the backup should not be the one that audits the configuration. And that's where we caught that we didn't actually select all the volumes, or we had a different retention schedule, or something else that led to a horror story. So we've made the mistakes, and then we've had all the MSPs that we've worked with the last 18 years make those and share those with us. And that's basically what that is. So my point is, if you took even one step away from that download and you added that to your process, and it made you either more efficient or just less likely to be sitting in front of your client saying, I don't have it, then that's an amazing outcome from my perspective.
Awesome. So please steal that process. See what I did? Servosity.com/process. I'm putting something on chat for everyone. Joe, Jeff, at this moment, there's just you guys. But this is something that, and if you want to talk more about it, Damien, you have a call tomorrow with somebody, with a partner, and just explain that. And that's the link to register for that call tomorrow. But go ahead.
Yeah, super relevant to cyber. I'd love to hear you guys' feedback on it. But I'm interviewing Eric Woodard. I'm a host of MSP Mindset, so I interview fascinating people. A lot of them are MSPs. But anyway, he was one of the first guys where his RMM infected him and all of 100% of his clients on the same day. So the thing that most of us, worried about is like, what the heck do we do about that? He has an amazing story of how not only survive, but managed to thrive. I think the story will be amazing. So if you have the opportunity to watch live or watch it later, wonderful. But Eric was kind enough to say, hey, I have my top 12 lessons actually learned from this. And a lot of them, there's a couple that are kind of like cybersecurity, but a lot of them are business. Mm-hmm. Like, we weren't prepared culturally for the stress it was going to put on our team. So here's what we did. And so he's got these takeaways that, because almost every MSP I talk to, I say, is that a concern? Do you feel like it's a non-issue? And they raise their hand and say it's a concern. So my point is, Eric is given this the ability to take this and write up his thoughts that he shared with us and turn that into a download. So if you do register for that, then you'll get his top 12 takeaways. And the real point I want to make is, you can do something about it instead of just saying, hey, I'm worried it's going to happen. And you can still worry, but instead of just saying I'm worried now, I don't know what to do. Now you can say, I'm worried, but I'm going to implement the stuff that, he learned by going through it. And it's a heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching. I mean, it's a horrible story. I mean, you can imagine there's not a lot of, he has some good on the other side, but just made me sick hearing this stuff. And so, he's kind enough to not only share the story, but like these takeaways, like they're priceless, because you couldn't pay me enough to go through what he went through to learn those lessons. So I talked to so many MSPs that are like, man, that's my big fear. So I'm thankful and honored that I get to interview him tomorrow, and that he's willing to give away his lessons learned. So any questions, feel free to jump in.
And that's pretty much all of it. I just have one more slide, and that's what's coming up next for boosters. Joe or Jeff? Hey, Shay, I know you just logged on. Any questions for Damien as far as what his processes are or business? And Damien, if you don't mind putting on chat where we can find you, where they can contact you in case of, if they want to talk about backups, or if they're replacing their backups and looking for something right now. Hey, there you go. That's on. Let me stop share real quick and then give you the room so you can see it.
Right there. I can drop that in the chat. I was really doing that to see if I could just throw Mark off his game as he was talking. It's really the whole reason I did that. So.
No, you can't. It's I'm getting very good at this.
Oh,
so
man. I need a different emotional outburst.
You do. So, all right. So back to that screen real quick. Once again, Damien, I thank you for coming in today. Thank you for explaining the, backups and why it makes sense for people to actually do it quarterly. And, Joe and Jeff agreed to that. Next week, we're going to go with It's Not Too Late. That's just my my title for it. I'm going to be talking about budgets that week. I'm going to go with the question of, you know, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. So even if you didn't do a budget forecast for 2024 for your clients, the best time to do it is now on that. So the November 1st, I'm going to build a budget. And then November 8th, I'm going to deep dive into that budget and the tools and the conversations that you guys should have with your clients. November 15th, I'm asking our devs for Lifecycle Insights to come in to show you what we've done so far and to show you what we have, what's coming up for our roadmap. On the 22nd, I don't know if we're going to have it yet, but that's the day before Thanksgiving. And I'm just going to be here to you know, for people to come in and ask you guys, hey, what are you guys thankful for? And maybe present that to my team and said, hey, Joe from Virginia is thankful for these things. And just to show everybody and just be thankful for you guys. And then the 29th, what does 2024 look like? I'm going to invite some of our MSP partners and discuss and have a quorum as far as what they see coming up soon next year. And once again, thank you so much for everybody to show up. I know we just had a few people. We've discussed that we wanted this at 3 p.m. sometime later on in the afternoon. I will bring that up and bubble that up to our team. So if nobody else has questions, concerns, emotional outbursts, I will let you guys go. You guys have an extra 20 minutes of your day. Please walk around. You guys don't have to do tickets. Don't work. Joe, I know you're sick. Get some rest. Drink lots of fluids, and we'll go from there. Any questions?
I do have one quick question for
go ahead.
Damien regarding disaster recovery plans. So do you guys help craft those, or what's your involvement there as far as like working with the MSP, working with the client? Where does all that dovetail with your business?
We probably should just, you know, kind of hand you one. We don't do that. You may have one or a part of one. So we're often involved in terms of what insight do you have, or how would you structure this? And obviously it can be a little more boilerplate, the more similar your clients are in terms of industry and size. And so I, you know, end up working with people that have clients that have 4 users. And then I end up working with ones that do co-manage for a Fortune 500. And obviously those are highly different conversations. So we don't provide the disaster recovery plan just outright. Maybe it's something we could do. I'd love your feedback on that, Joe. But we're often, you know, brought to bear and say, hey, you know, I got this. I'm trying to put together a plan. Also, disaster recovery is broader than IT, right? So there's that aspect of it. So we can certainly weigh in and make some of this easier of, given what's going on, like on the IT side, you know, how quickly can we recover locally? How quickly can we recover offsite? And usually we'll break it into 2 or 3 scenarios, because you could end up in 100 and do 100 different tabletop exercises, depending on scenario, you know, 1 through 100. That's even Fortune 500 doesn't usually do that. So I guess my point is, with the average business, we'll cover the 3 most common scenarios of, you know, the building's no longer accessible. Doesn't have to mean it's burned down, but there's a power outage or storm surge, or, you know, just depending on where they are. And all the way to the more common things like, I can't find my file, and, you know, what do I do? And, and what's a reasonable recovery time in that regard. And the other thing is, like, we'll give, if you would like, I get to personally work with hundreds of MSPs. So we'll give kind of some of the best practices, because if the software can recover it in 12.2 minutes, it doesn't, like, you're still humans. You're still running a service desk. You're going to have a certain time before you even look at a ticket, and then a certain time before you do something. Even if you have us do it, then you're going to reach out. So, you know, you can put it doesn't have to be, if you want an actual SLA, great. But even so, just an expectation to say, if this happens 4 hours, if this happens 8 hours, if this happens, you know, 24 hours, like, you know, we usually can help break it down into that, which gives you enough time to respond and be the hero. So you're not setting expectations at, no matter what happens, we'll have your file back or your server up in 30 minutes. And, you know, then it's going to be when 3 people are out sick and on vacation and you're stretched thin. And, and you can really do it in an hour and a half, but you couldn't have done it in 30 minutes. So, I've either done that myself or worked with MSPs who have. So it's just that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
Do you guys currently provide one, or is that something you're working on?
We provide disaster recovery plans to our clients, but
Nice.
kind of touching on what you mentioned. I mean, if it's a weather disaster or something of that nature, there could be 15 or 20 of our clients that are all down at once. So is it realistic to have them 90% up within 6 hours? I mean, it's probably not in that scenario.
So this doesn't solve all of it, but that's part of why we're part of, the way I look at this is, if you wanted to ever use Servosity, I don't mean this in a sales way, but if you did, then we're kind of an extension of your team, because no MSP has the ability to deal with, even half of their clients simultaneously.
Right.
Like the story Eric's going to tell tomorrow is 100% of my clients are down. We don't have, even though they were like, let's spin them all up in the cloud, it's not like a silver bullet. You still got to connect the VPN or do whatever and so they hadn't thought about this before, but one of the things you had to go through is like, we're going to have to make a conscious choice over who's first, second, and third versus who's, 10th and 12th and 15th. And that means some of them are going to be down much longer based on those hard choices. So, I won't spoil it, but their backup provider failed them pretty spectacularly. So I'm not picking on them, but they had tested one client at a time, even in a DR scenario, but not multiple, like you said, 30 or whatever. And so the backup provider had some issues, but I guess more importantly, from my perspective, it'd be great if you tested the backup provider, but most MSPs are really surprised by how much more complex it is to deal with 30 instead of 1. And it sounds hard, but like now all of a sudden you start miscommunicating. You send the wrong IP to the wrong person in the wrong chat message. And all of a sudden, we've seen people trying to do that. We had one that did a DR exercise and they tried to do several, miscommunicated with another and took down a client that was up that wasn't supposed to be part of the DR exercise. So
whoops.
Yeah. So anyway, they worked on their documentation after that, but yeah, nothing like, trying it to really understand it. And that's why, again, it's not about hiring us. It's just like, that's what's in that guide. It's like, whether you hire us or not, it just test. And if you test, you'll know. And I just have been doing this long enough. I don't want to find out when they're all calling and yelling. Like, I want to know, what that looks like and how long it's going to take and how many we could do concurrently before, after that, it's basically a queue, right? If you can do 3 concurrently based on your staff or whatever, then, if you have 30, it's going to take a lot longer.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Damien, have you ever heard of a tool that ScalePad kind of quietly recently acquired called Adapt MC?
No, I know about Backup Radar, but I don't know about Adapt.
Yeah, so Adapt, we acquired it, and it's kind of slowly moving into a bolt-on to Backup Radar. So you can't buy it individually. It's like a Backup Radar enhancement, and it specifically helps with that. It's around automating the disaster recovery writing plans.
Nice.
And now since we've acquired it, it's literally just kind of laying dormant there. We haven't done anything with it, but I mean, they're working on it in the background. But
Sure.
yeah, I think it used to be called something else, maybe Plan Dior. That might ring a bell. I can't remember, but yeah, it's specifically around that. So Joe, when you kind of asked that question, it kind of sprung to mind that we acquired a solution a few months ago and then have not heard much about it since. But yeah,
I didn't even know about it. That's how
yeah, there you go.
That's how quiet it was.
yeah, that's how quiet it was. I mean,
Well,
I'm not the top guy, so I don't know. I'm just a guy here in ScalePad.
You got to
Strictly
tell
need to know basis. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to tell Alex Farling to get it out there better. Yeah. Everybody needs to write their plans better, right? So if that's out there, if people can use it, maybe, share that, because I get asked that a lot, like, the actual plan, because we're just a part of the DR side of it. Last thing real quickly, how do you get the title of rocket scientist, man? That's pretty epic.
That's the solutions engineer that's what we call ourselves. We're rocketeers. So he's a rocket scientist. I don't know. I don't have a title yet. So
This is TBD. Okay.
yeah, TBD.
Mark
So
Nazio TBD.
yep.
You get
And we'll go
rocket
from there.
scientists with 4 years of tenure with ScalePad as well, I suppose.
Oh, okay.
Is that what that
Alright.
is?
Well, no, it is specifically the solutions engineering team, but yeah, I feel like I've worked here forever. So
Rocket surgeon.
There you go. Rocket surgery.
It's not rocket science. It's rocket surgeon. I don't know if I'm a surgeon because I don't do medical stuff. My hands, though they're rated E for everyone, I have arthritis, so I can't really hold specific tools correctly. That's neither near nor there. Jeff, do you have any questions for Damien before I ramble on?
Nope, I'm happy.
Good.
Thank you. We'll be checking out. I will. I don't have any real power, but I know who to whine to, so I will.
Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect. Yeah, checking it out. Check out Damien. Once again, thank you so much. And I will let everybody go. And I said 20 minutes. Now it's just 10. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Have a great Wednesday. Have a great week. I'll see you guys next week. So
All right. Thank
go
you,
from there.
Great to
guys.
meet you guys.
Thanks, everybody.
take care.
Bye.